you can tell my voice is kind of messed up. I've got a pretty bad head cold, but still got to do maintenance on the bikes. 40,000 miles. I need front brakes on my Street Glide. So we're going to do a video today of how to change the front brakes on a Street Glide. This video is actually going to be for a Harley. The principles are the same for all the Harleys. You'll need your service manual, but it's really not that difficult. It can be a little bit messy though. First thing you do is we've got some of this fake leather stuff that we use to just cover the bike. Brake fluid does eat through paint very quickly and very easily. I just taped this area because we're going to have to take the top off the master cylinder to relieve air pressure. And then I wrapped a piece down here on the fender as well. So let's go ahead and begin. One of the things that you're going to need is your service manual. There you go. And make sure you follow the instructions in that service manual. That's what it's for. The first thing you're supposed to do is take the caliper off. These two bolts right here is what holds it on. It's going to be a 12-point socket. A lot of people may not have this. You can't just take a regular socket and make it fit on the grooves in there. So you're going to have to check that before you even start trying to do this job. So we're going to take that off, and then we're going to just let the caliper hang off the brake line. And that is in the service manual. Don't worry, it's not going to pop off or break the brake line or anything to that effect. So they are kind of tough. Get it on there though. Just break it loose, they'll come out. And you can do it with your hands from that point. Okay, so we got the bolts loose, we take them out, and that's what holds the caliper on. And basically just slide it down off of the rotor. And there goes my cover. And let it hang. Okay, so we got the caliper off, and then the next thing we do is we take the screen off. It just comes off with your hands like that. It's got some little grooves, notches there that allow it to come off. Set that to the side. Alright, so you got the screen off. Now there's a retaining clip in here. And I got these real handy long nose with a big flat wide tip. Those work real good to get under there. Just pull it out. Hopefully you can see that on the video. Lay it down to the side. Next we're going to remove the pad pin. It's a number 5 Allen wrench. It's a metric. And what it does is it holds that retainer clip on. So if you go back in here, it's going to be probably impossible to see with the video. But there's a groove in that pin that the retainer clip sits on. So we're going to remove the pin now after we've taken the clip out. It's pretty easy to get out. Turn it till it comes out. Okay, so I loosened the pad pin. I've got it almost out. What the pad pin does, it goes through the brake pads themselves. So I'm going to get a new set and show you before we take these out. Okay, so these are the new pads that we bought. Now, in the kit, of course, with the brake pads, you get a new pin. We're going to be putting a new pad pin and a new retainer clip in there. And what it does is, inside the caliper, this pin goes through those holes, and that's what holds it in place. And then you got a notch where the retainer clip goes, and if this thing starts to back out, that retainer clip will hold the pad pin from coming out, and your brakes won't fall out on you while you're rolling down the road. Okay, so before we take that pin out though, what we're going to do is we're going to take the top off the master cylinder. Because what we're going to do is we're going to slowly compress those pads, because we've got to open up the space between them so they'll fit over the rotor. So we're going to just take this top off. Now you can do this without bleeding the brakes. It does say that even in the service manual. There we go. You can see I've got it taped up real good up here, because brake fluid, it will eat through paint quite easily. Okay, so we've got the top off the master cylinder. What we're going to do is we're going to compress the brake pads into the caliper pistons, and because we've got to make that space wider so the new pads will fit over the rotor. When we do that though, it's going to push that brake fluid back up the line and out through the master cylinder itself. So that's why we got it taped off real good up there. If you do it real slow, you won't have any problems. You also won't have any air suction going in there, and you won't end up having to bleed your brakes. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a screwdriver, and you can see in here, let me push it off to the side a little bit so I have it loose. Right there is the pistons. And that's what pushes the pads. They're on both sides. So it pushes the pads up against your rotor. So we need to depress those all the way in until the pads hit the bore itself. So when we do this, though, we got to do it real slow, because up top where the master cylinder is going to push that fluid back up. And we won't have a mess if we're real careful doing this. And you can feel it as the piston depresses. And we're going to go all the way until that pad's against the bore on both sides. And that will make room for the new pads. There it goes. I felt that one give. There it goes. That back side of that one was a little tough. And you do this with the old pads in, because if you mess them up, then you won't have any issues. So now you can see they're all the way against the inside of that caliper, which will make room for the new pads. Now, since I didn't have a GoPro for both spots at the same time doing that, you can see I just use painter's tape. It's just something to catch the brake fluid in case it shoots out. There's a little hole down there in the middle, which it didn't. If you do it slow, you won't have any issues there. So now we're going to come back. Now we're going to remove the pin that we showed you earlier, so we can actually take the pads out in preparation for the new pads. So you take the old pin out, you can see all the rust on it. They get used pretty heavy. Alright, so then we're just going to take our pads out. You have to get a screwdriver in there to kind of move it out. There you go, there's the old pad. And there's the old pads. Now you also want to inspect this. This is your pad spring. And just make sure it's not damaged or worn, which this is in really good shape still. So we don't have anything to worry about there. If it is damaged or worn, you're going to want to replace it. Okay, I wanted to get this better, so we got a flashlight out. Those round things right there that you can see, those are the caliper pistons. That's what pushes the pads against the rotor and, of course, causes you to stop. And then you've got your springs down here, which is what I was saying earlier, that you could replace if they're damaged or worn, which these are not. Now we're going to take the pad. There is a right and a left side within the caliper. You're going to want to take the little hole, and it's going to match up where the pin goes, and it's going to push up against that caliper spring in there, and this little tab is what it's going to push the pad up against, which helps hold it into place. Now, I got to do this without a flashlight, so we're just going to take our pad, we're going to stick it in there, and then, well, let me redo this. Make sure the hole's down to match up with the hole. Just put it in, and then you're going to push down on it. You'll feel that spring give, and the pad will slide right in. We're going to do that on both sides. So there's one. And there's the second one. So they're in. You can kind of push them. You'll feel it pushing up and down in there, and that's good. Make sure it's seated real well in there. And then we're going to take our pin, and we're going to put it right through there, right through the pads. And we're going to tighten that thing up with our Allen wrench. Alright, so we put it in. We get our Allen wrench, we're going to tighten it up. And it's supposed to be tightened to 75 to 102 inch-pounds. Now this is going to be real hard to see. Let me see if I can get the flashlight in there. There we go. So you can see the notch that's in there, right there. And that's where the retainer clip is going to go. So we'll just pick up, it's hard to see, pick up the new retainer clip, snap it in there, and that's it. Your new pads are on the caliper. Okay, so we got the new pads in. Now we're going to put it back onto the rotor. Now here's one thing you want to watch is the fender itself actually gets in the way, so you can't put it into the side. That's why the owner's manual even says drop it straight down from the bottom, and that keeps it away from your fender. So we're just going to take it from the hanging position, slide it over there. Since you've depressed the pistons, it goes right on into place. Hold it up in there. Grab one of your your bolts. Once you get the first one in, for the most part it's on. Then we'll just put the second one on and tighten it up. There we go. So it's on now. We take the socket back to it, and we'll tighten that back up. I got the torque wrench out for this because this is a foot-pounds. I just don't have an inch-pound torque wrench, and the service manual states to do this from 28 to 38 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go right in between. I'm going to go at 32. I've got it set. It's going to be probably impossible to see. And then just put that on there. Turn it till you hear it click. I've kind of tightened it a little bit. Then we're just going to push until it clicks. So I'm going to be real quiet so maybe you can hear it. There we go. That's 32 foot-pounds. We'll come back down to the bottom one then. There it is right there. So it's tight. That brake is done and on. So now we go to the other side. One thing I did forget is the screen. So we're just going to slide it in, snap it in. Now we're done and we can go to the other side. Okay, we're not going to show the whole process of the other side, but what we are going to do on this one is as I depress the pistons and I make the pads go full to the flat bore of the caliper, Margaret's going to take the camera up top and hopefully maybe we'll see the fluid being pushed back into the master cylinder. So she's taking it up there. We'll give her a second to get focused on it. I'm down here so I can't see anything, but it is depressing.
It's made a couple of bubbles.
Okay, good.
Woo!
Okay, and go ahead, bring it back down here. Okay, and that's fully depressed. So hopefully you got to see some of the bubble action that takes place up there as I depress the pads before we take the pin out and remove them. Okay, we got everything back together. So I wanted to come back up to the master cylinder reservoir, and it's going to fill up after doing that because obviously when we depressed the pistons, the fluid that was in the line, some of it came back up. So it's actually overfilled right now a little bit. But if you look right there, it says max, and the service manual says to fill this thing up to where it's right at the max line, which it is right now. If I kind of touch it, you can see it there. Okay, before we put the cover on, we got to get the lines filled back up, and we got to depress the pistons in the calipers so that they'll push against the rotors. So we're going to do that with the top off, and we're going to just depress it. And you saw the little bubble there. Not going to go real fast. And this is going to slowly get the fluid back down in the lines and depress the calipers. All right, so I've pumped it about 13, 14 times. You saw at the start, we were depressing it all the way to the handle grip. Now it's just a little bit. You can still see little bubbles come up, which is fine. We're just going to keep doing this until it gets real good and tight. Okay, we're going to have to add a little brake fluid, not a lot. It's .4 just to get it back up to the max level. Okay. There, we did make a little bit of mess pouring it. The spout didn't pour very well, so I got a little bit of brake fluid around. We've wiped it off real good though. It wasn't a whole lot. That's why we used this as a cover. Some of it dripped down on that and didn't get on our bike. Got a little bit up here by the brake handle, but not a whole lot. All right, this is a lid. So just to avoid a mess and the possibility of drips, I'm going to wipe all the old brake fluid off of this. And then I'm going to do the same to the seal. That way we don't get anything anywhere inadvertently. And take the possibility of messing our paint up. See, my hands are pretty dirty. I'll wash them before we even get too far. Okay, so this is all cleaned up. My hands are clean now. Now, what we didn't do is during this whole process, when you saw the fluid come up, we never introduced the line to air. So we don't have to bleed the brakes at this point. We didn't do a brake line flush, and the reservoir never went dry, which means we don't have to bleed this once we put this back on. Just set that on there, make sure it seats real good, and tighten it up. trying to do this so I don't block the camera so everybody can see this. Alright, that's it for that. So once you're done, go ahead and ride. You see you got good brake action now already. What we don't want to do is we don't want to ride it hard. We don't want to really get on the brakes for the first 100 miles. That's in your service manual. You want to be able to let the pads set and break into the rotors if you didn't change your rotors, or even if you changed your rotors. You know, I inspected mine. You could feel them. I had no excessive wear, so I didn't have to change these rotors. Change the pads soon enough so it wasn't going to be an issue anyway. But if you were to you know, ride it down to bare metal, then yeah, you'd probably have to change your rotors. And at that point, you have to take the wheel off. If you keep up with the bike, though, you shouldn't have to do that. Maybe once every 100,000 miles or so. I'm at 40,000 miles, and my rotor is in perfect condition. Once again, make sure that you get an owner's manual or a service manual. You need a service manual. If you're going to do stuff like this, you're going to want to follow the specs in that service manual. So I hope this helps. Saves a lot of money. Pads were $100, and they come with the pin and the retaining clip. Service at the dealership would cost you $120 or so just in labor. And even though I did the video, still did it in about half an hour. Could do it in even shorter time than that if I wasn't making the video. So it's not even going to be a lot of time out of your day to change the pads. And now we're just going to wash the bike and get it ready and go for a ride tomorrow.